Darkness, screams, the sound of iron chains rattling in the wind. The year is 1431 Transylvania. A child is born, a child who will one day grow into one of the most terrifying rulers the world has ever known. His name? Vlad. History remembers him by many names. To the people of Wallachia, he was Vlad Dracula, the son of the dragon. To his enemies he was Vlad III, the Impaler. But to the world today he is remembered as the man who inspired the most chilling vampire legend of all time. Dracula. Vlad was not born into peace. His homeland of Wallachia, a small principality caught between the Christian kingdoms of Europe and the unstoppable Ottoman Empire, was a land drenched in blood. Betrayal, invasions, shifting alliances, this was the world young Vlad entered. And from the moment he opened his eyes, survival meant cruelty. His father, Vlad II Dracula, was a knight of the Order of the Dragon, a brotherhood sworn to defend Christendom against the Ottomans. It was this legacy of the dragon that gave Vlad his infamous name, Dracula, son of the dragon. But childhood would not be kind to Vlad. At just 11 years old, he and his younger brother Radu were taken hostage by the Ottomans. Prisoners in a foreign land, surrounded by enemies. Imagine the fear of a boy trapped in the very empire that threatened to destroy his homeland. This captivity would scar Vlad forever, and it is here many believe that his obsession with cruelty and survival was born. Vlad learned the art of politics, of war, and of fear, not from books, but from living in the shadows of the Sultan's court. He witnessed executions, torture, and the merciless way power was wielded. And when he returned to Wallachia, he carried these lessons like weapons in his mind. By the time Vlad claimed the throne, his land was in chaos. Nobles betrayed one another for power. Enemies lurked at every border. The Ottomans demanded obedience and gold. And Vlad chose to rule not with mercy but with terror. When Vlad returned to his homeland, Wallachia was a kingdom in ruins. Corruption rotted the nobility, the boyars schemed and betrayed, and foreign powers tugged at the throne like wolves fighting over a carcass. To survive here, you had to be ruthless. And Vlad was more than ready to play this game. At first, his claim to the throne was weak. Rivals circled, doubting this young man who had grown up as a hostage. But Vlad knew one thing: fear is stronger than loyalty. And so he began to weave fear into every act of his rule. He invited the boyars, the powerful nobles, to a great feast. The tables were filled with roasted meat, goblets of wine, laughter echoing through the halls. But as the nobles relaxed, thinking themselves safe, Vlad struck. Soldiers stormed the hall, and the guests were slaughtered. Some say their bodies were left to rot where they fell. Others say Vlad impaled them outside the castle walls, sharp wooden stakes piercing their bodies, their faces frozen in screams. Impaling. This became Vlad's signature. A punishment so horrifying that it turned his name into a curse. Victims were stripped, forced onto sharpened stakes, and left to die slowly over hours, sometimes days. Entire forests of impaled corpses would greet his enemies, a grotesque warning that this was the land of Vlad III. But why such cruelty? Was he a sadist, or a genius strategist? Perhaps both. Because in his brutality there was method. Fear controlled the nobles. Fear kept thieves away from the roads. Fear warned the Ottomans that Wallachia was not an easy prize. Stories spread like wildfire. Merchants whispered of Vlad's punishments. Foreign travelers wrote letters of horror. And soon, the name, Dracula, carried not just the legacy of the dragon, but the terror of the Impaler. Even his enemies began to respect him. He was no mere prince. He was a monster, a phantom of dread. But to his people, those who obeyed his laws, he brought order. Streets were safe. Justice, though cruel, was swift. And in this paradox, Vlad became both protector and predator. 1450s, the Ottoman Empire was a storm on Europe's horizon. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, now turned his gaze toward Wallachia. To him, Vlad was just another vassal, expected to bow and pay tribute. But Vlad was not a man who bowed. When the Ottomans sent envoys demanding his loyalty, Vlad welcomed them to his court. They entered, proud and arrogant, refusing to remove their turbans in respect to the prince. Vlad smiled politely, then ordered that the turbans be nailed to their skulls. Their screams echoed in the halls as blood ran across the floor. His message was clear: this land bows to no one. Mehmed was furious. Soon, Ottoman armies marched into Wallachia. Thousands of soldiers, veterans of Constantinople's siege, armed and disciplined. By all accounts, Vlad should have been crushed. But Vlad did not fight like a king, he fought like a phantom. He unleashed guerrilla warfare. His men struck at night, burning supply lines, poisoning wells, and leaving villages empty. The Ottomans would march forward, only to find nothing but ashes and silence. And then came Vlad's masterpiece of terror, the Forest of the Impaled. As Mehmed's forces approached the capital, they found the road lined with stakes. On them, 20,000 corpses, men, women, even children, left to rot under the sun. The air was thick with death. The sight was so ghastly, so unimaginable, that hardened Ottoman soldiers trembled. Even Sultan Mehmed himself recoiled in shock. History tells us he turned back, whispering that it was impossible to defeat a man who ruled with such cruelty. Yet, Wallachia was a land cursed by politics. While Vlad terrified his enemies, his own nobles betrayed him. The boyars conspired, the neighboring kingdoms shifted allegiances, and soon Vlad was abandoned by those who once cheered his victories. Captured and imprisoned, Vlad spent years in chains. But his legend only grew stronger. Tales of his cruelty spread across Europe. Pamphlets and books painted him as a monster, a blood drinker, a demon in human form. The seeds of the Dracula myth were being sown. Years passed. Vlad, the monster of Wallachia, the scourge of the Ottomans, sat in chains. His enemies celebrated. They thought his reign of terror was over. But Vlad was not so easily broken. After more than a decade in captivity, political tides shifted. The Hungarian king, who once kept him prisoner, now needed a strong ruler in Wallachia to counter the Ottoman advance. And so, Vlad Dracula was released. He returned to a land scarred by war, betrayal, and famine. His people whispered his name with both fear and hope. To them, Vlad was not a tyrant. He was their shield against the endless tide of invaders. Once again he raised his banner, the dragon of House Draculesti, and called his warriors to arms. But fate had written a darker end. In 1476, Vlad faced the Ottomans once more. The battle was brutal, fought in the forests and valleys of his homeland. For a moment, it seemed he would triumph again. But treachery as always stalked him. Some accounts say he was betrayed by his own boyars. Others claim he was mistaken for an enemy by his allies and cut down in the chaos. What we know is this: Vlad the Impaler fell on the battlefield, his body hacked to pieces. His head was taken by the Ottomans and sent to Constantinople, displayed on a spike as proof that the monster was dead. Yet death could not silence his legend. Even in the 15th century, stories of Vlad's cruelty traveled faster than armies. German and Russian pamphlets spread his deeds across Europe. Tales of a prince who feasted among forests of corpses, who drank blood from goblets, who ruled not as a man but as a demon. To the terrified he was a butcher. To the oppressed he was justice itself. Centuries later, in 1897, Irish author Bram Stoker gave the world his novel Dracula. The vampire count, immortal and bloodthirsty, was born from whispers of Vlad's reign. And though Stoker never traveled to Wallachia, the shadow of Vlad the Impaler haunted his pages. Today Vlad III is remembered by two names: a national hero of Romania, and the real Dracula. A ruler who used fear as his sword, cruelty as his shield, and left behind a legacy so dark, so unforgettable, that more than 5 centuries later, we still speak his name with awe and horror. This was the story of Vlad the Impaler, the prince who became a nightmare, the man who became a myth, and the myth that became Dracula.